Thank you very much, Billy. Wow, I'll have to start with a joke because that's how you do these things. You start with a joke, and I was making the joke outside here that Jason has become my joke today. He doesn't know it. He didn't know it yet, but he is. He's the joke because last night I slept great. I get to come talk to sustainability professionals. I don't have to sell this programming at all. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So I was relaxed, nice and calm when I came in here. And then he started talking about EPR and brought back every ounce of stress that the week had let go of. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. So ASR Group, most of you know us better by uh, what we sell you, and that is sugar. So Domino Sugar, Tate& Lyle Sugar, Red Path Sugar. If you happen to wind up in Belize, we are Belize Sugars Industries. If you happen to wind up in Mexico, we are in Rio San Nicolas. So we're kind of everywhere. Um, we're mostly cane sugar refiners, but we also have our farms. Here in Florida, we have a sister company, it's Florida Crystals. Here in Florida, we have 3 refineries and mill organizations. In Belize, we have a refinery, mill, and farming operations. Same in Mexico. But for all of those, usually we go directly to consumer. We don't stop at the refining process after we produce the raw. For 360 other mills around the globe, they go to raw, which then comes to our refineries. And our refineries sit at cities at closer distribution locations. It moves from there either directly to your shelves or to big consumers that turn it into a chocolate candy bar for you, or move on to soda, or move on to something else entirely, or they wind up in a small co-packing facility that puts it into small sticks and sachets a little bit closer to your distribution location. So, needless to say, packaging is a whole lot of fun in all of those regions you just talked about. And yes, that complexity is there. Now that kind of gets us to what I'm here to talk to you about today. What I was asked to talk to you about. And for the record, when we sit down at the table, you're welcome to ask me about anything. Believe me when I tell you our organization touches just about every topic. So if you want to ask me about regenerative agriculture, which I got some questions about outside here, feel free. That comes underneath my programming expectations and requirements. If you want to ask me about what it means to convert to non-petroleum based alternative fuels, or what it means to do waste heat recovery, or what it means to do this or that or the other, by all means, we can have that conversation as well. But today, it's about how do I tell the people what we're doing. Now, and here we go. Sustainability reporting historically has been a nice to do, a nice to have, a marketing tool. And I'm here to tell you those days are done. You're going to hear more today from a couple others that are going to talk specifically about regulatory compliance disclosure requirements. Mine's going to touch on that. But for a company like me, we're not only worried about regulatory disclosure. The regulatory disclosure is what protects me when my lawyers start going, we shouldn't have a sustainability report anymore. This greenwashing thing's getting out of hand. Then it becomes, I'm sorry, you don't have a choice because we have to sell into California without disclosure law come 2026, i.e. this year. You don't have a sustainability report, then you are non-compliant. So there's that. And you'll hear a bit more about that later on today. But more importantly, the customer expectation is also a pressure that is there. How do you answer to everybody at the same time? Now, most of you that are out there that are in my neck of the woods that are also producing a product, any product, you've got customers knocking on your door asking one of 2 things. Can you tell me what you do? Or can you complete my survey? And everybody's got a different survey. For ASR, what we started to do 12 years ago in this journey is say, we can tell you what we do. We're going to do it in one sustainability report. And I'm not going to fill out your survey monkey. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do it. But you can put down from my report, which is built on a good standard, which starts to meet your need. Now, this report has matured and grown, and I will invite you to download it. It is publicly available. www.asr-group.com. FY24 is current. FY25, I'm still working on. It takes about 9 months to put it together. That's speeding up with data and everything else being automated. That's speeding up with programming. That's speeding up with software kits that are coming out of the woodwork. but it still takes effort. And that's what brings us to this concept. How do I make one source of truth that answers to everyone's needs, whether it be regulatory or whether it be market pressure, and still make it defensible so my lawyers are still happy? And it comes down to governance of the data. It comes down to explaining the methods through methodology documents that might be independent to the sustainability report. And it comes back down to having one aligned story globally. We have the fun of working in many regions, which is fun, but also that added complexity of where all the EPR streams overlap but don't necessarily do the same thing. Or all the decarbonization requirements overlap but don't necessarily do the same thing. So you have to come up with one aligned story that can work everywhere, and then consider how do you talk to the unique nature of a given region with an addendum or something along those lines. So that's what we aim to do. As we push through it, you start realizing things start to align. If you've been in this game for the last decade, you start to see things harmonize. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. What started out as GRI says this is the best thing to say or how to say it, is now merging with IFRS, is now merging with, we're that alphabet soup again. But they're starting to align with what needs to be discussed. And then you're starting to see the regulators start to say, okay, well, if GRI says it, well, maybe our regulations should too. And everybody's starting to identify, well, these are the pillars, these are the programs, this fits into this bucket, this fits into that bucket, and it's starting to harmonize. The more that happens, the more you can have a single point of disclosure. Now, we run into difficulties. Guess what? The US doesn't like to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion very much. I didn't know if you knew that or not. So we have to be gentle in that section, even though in Europe, I have to disclose on what the gender gap says, right? I have to give data. So we have to be very gentle with some portions. And it's out, again, back to what was talked about earlier. How do we phrase it that still keeps everybody happy, that stays away from those hot button words, but still meets the need? And by the way, everybody thinks Europe, man, that's the place that everybody's ahead there. Well, Mexico's beat them to the punch for legislation as far as disclosure. And if you didn't know that, you'll hear about it probably today, a little bit later today. But they not only want disclosure, but validation. Third-party validation that must meet critical assurance or must meet reasonable assurance. Reasonable assurance means they also check your invoices and your data to see that the data is valid before it winds up in the report. Limited assurance just means, yeah, that model looks right. That's better than I've seen anywhere else. Go with it. So that's where we're going. This position is no longer a good to have. And this is what I must stress to everyone here. If you're working in the sustainability space, and I've said this since the Sustainability Consortium conferences when I've been asked to speak, if you still consider your sustainability report to be a marketing document, you are absolutely wrong. Your sustainability report is a scientific publication. The more you're going to have it third-party validated, you may as well consider it like any other publication in academia where it sees blind review. It must be true. If it is true, it becomes defensible, though. And that's when the world starts to change again. So we start with a good governance foundation. What goes into it? Why are we saying it? What's the boundary? What are we trying to get to? What's in and out of discussion and scope? We move on to who's asking. We move on from who's asking to which regions are different. We move past that to supporting layers. What additional documentation do I require? What additional addendum is necessary? If I don't want all the words in a 250-page sustainability report, which is 2024, sorry, maybe I want to pull some of that out into a parallel governance document that doesn't change every year. So we just quantify or talk in one document what our carbon disclosure looks like and why we do it and how we do it. And I keep all the language out of the report itself and just give you the updates on the data, just give you updates on the progress, right? So what supporting documents are linked? And then finally, what's your core disclosure? What do you have to say? What do your customers want you to say? And then what unique things do you want to say? And it's the unique things that make it interesting. Suddenly, if you've gotten to the point where it's repeatable and it's defensible, you can start playing with the numbers. Our whole goal on things like carbon credits, biodiversity credits, regenerative agriculture green tokens, certification of green sourcing, all of that. Oops, I just knocked the batteries out of that. We'll give that just a second. There's one row there. Thank you very much. All of that starts to push us to what is defensible in claim and who's buying. Green credits, carbon credits, those voluntary carbon credits, those sell a change. If I change my fuel type to move from a petroleum-based fuel to a green fuel, or if I get more efficient at my green plants. By the way, sugar starts from the plant. That plant has a high fiber content. Cane sugar can produce all the energy it needs for making the sugar at the mill and the refinery. And then we also produce 15%, roughly, of Belize's energy requirement. 15%. All green energy. If I optimize, because right now we burn it at 50% moisture, if I optimize that by putting a pelletizer in, I don't steam the water out while I burn the biomass. And I get more MBTU and more grid electricity, and I have to buy less from Mexico. Those differences carry change. It's the change that you're selling. If I then have a certificate and I've got a customer that says, but now I said I wanted to be net zero by 2030. So can you just tell me you did that? Not knowing everything that went behind it. I'm sure I can take that certificate and I can go, you're mine, right? Current market value of that voluntary carbon credit is between $5 and $150 a metric ton, depending on how resolved it is, how resilient it is, how confident we are that change happened. The more I can stack that up, the more I can sell to this customer who's ready to have their zero claim. And as long as they're willing to pay for the market value, then great. The moment they're not, and a farmer who's doing regenerative agriculture gets a certificate because he's done something that pushes carbon into the soil, shouldn't he be rewarded or she be rewarded for that activity? Shouldn't that cost associated with that activity see benefit? Those carrots down. It can be inset with the product, or they can step out of the product stream and use it as an offset. And then they can sell it to American Airlines, who wants a zero per air mile. But there's value in these transactions. But it still has to come back to the core disclosure. If I'm making all those claims, and I'm also double counting it when I tell the rest of the world, look how great we are, and lowering the whole of the carbon footprint, I'm double counting. Those must be avoided. This is a scientific document. It's what keeps the lawyers happy too. So keep that in mind as you're doing disclosure. But as we start talking about disclosure, I threw these up. I know that there's going to be talked about a little bit more in depth later, but these are some of the things that are hitting us. And yes, we've heard about some of the California laws and some of the disclosure laws associated there, specifically when it comes down to labeling. There's also ones that tell us we must tell the company, or the country and the state, what our carbon footprint is, and it must be validated. That's regulatory now. Can't get away from it. Mexico, same thing. Europe started to head down the CSRD track and then backtracked a little bit as legal gets involved and everybody kind of delays. But make no mistake, those are just delays on the way to disclosure. And then last, you're going to wind up with this idea, this single backbone of disclosure and requirement that is then shadowed by other assets, other tools, green tokens that can be chain of custody and passed. Invoices that carry a zero carbon footprint because here's the green token and the green credits with it. Then it's moving us from a reporting ideology to an operationalized sustainability ideology. That's the transition we are in now. That's what legislation drives us to. It gets you past the hurdle that everybody has to talk about it. And as soon as everybody has to talk about it, if you're in market discussions and you want to hedge your market, you want to stay ahead of your market, then you want to talk about your differences. The moment you're going to talk about your differences, you better have it so solid that it's defensible. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. And we'll certainly take the opportunity to talk to it more at the table if you like. There's a lot of products that we have out on our website. You're welcome to them. Please plagiarize as much as you can. I give you permission. The more we spread the best-in-class way of talking about what sustainability is, the more we paint people into a corner of saying that it's just fluff, or that's just because we are tree huggers still. No, this is all about profitability and efficiency and stability. Get over the old and let's move on to what it is, which is trying to improve our world and our existence within it. Thank you very much.